Hey folks, join me for Networking 101. I'll be taking attendance too. You know, one of the questions we get a lot is, what is the difference really between a router and a switch? Well, you can look at some of the physical difference. You know, they have a lot more ports and stuff like that. But in the most basic 101 sense, what is the real difference between these two products? Well, simply, going as old school as we can, a switch, when you look at it, you got to spell it right there, is a layer 2 device, right? It is designed to connect a lot of clients. You're going to notice it because it's going to have a lot of ports on it, right? Any good switch is going to have some really good port density, and it's going to actually service a bunch of clients here. You know, all your machines, everybody plugs into basically the switch. Now, switches themselves will handle the communication in a bunch of different ways. And boy, we can get super complex in doing that. As a matter of fact, Cisco Press has a book called The Switch Book. I think it's like 800 pages of everything you want to know about a switch. So they do get pretty darn in depth, right? A router, on the other hand, if you look at what it does, now a router typically doesn't have as many ports on it. So take a look at this. You can see these are very old products and stuff as well, but these don't have as many ports on there and stuff because they are traditionally what we call layer 3 type of devices. They're used to communicate networks that don't normally talk to each other. These switches are connecting clients so they can actually talk to each other. I can send a message to producer Steve directly, and he's going to get it because we're on the same layer 2 type of network. In a router, once you start dividing boundaries and stuff, start climbing, you know, what we call the stack, routers actually enable that different communication where there's a barrier, where there's a boundary, and that's what a router does. Routers have a little more complexity to them, actually quite a bit more complexity to them than switches. They don't have as many ports, but they do have the ability to connect a bunch of different type of interfaces, right? On a switch here, you're looking at Ethernet, right? This is the domain of the ether. Anything that is connecting up, you're looking at an Ethernet style connection on nearly every switch today. That's what they're connecting. Routers, on the other hand, they can connect up. Of course, they can connect Ethernet connections as well. But, you know, they can also connect frame relay. You know, they can also connect ATM. You know, they can also connect MPLS. You know, they can also connect really just about any other type of technology via interface. You enable it, they'll convert that frame type over and allow these devices to actually flow communication back and forth. And there's a lot of different controls and ways to do that. But in essence, that's really what the difference between these two devices are. These connect devices on the same network that want to talk to each other, that can share and communicate at the most basic function. They'll communicate through a switch. Routers, on the other hand, they connect networks that are not alike, that need some type of help, need some type of translation to connect over. Now, many devices, many switches you'll see, and routers as well, they'll say that they're layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 switches, routers, that type of stuff. They're hybrids, and they're really a result of technology and how we've advanced in the science of networking, that we're able to put more and more and more stuff in less. As a matter of fact, this is a really old router, but even if you look at this, it's got a switch built into it, right? So you can actually support that. And so we consolidate and make them more and more and more ready. But regardless, if it is a switch that routes or a router that switches, it will specifically say that. It's a switching router. It's a layer 3 switch, those type of things. Then you'll know kind of what you're looking at and stuff. Because of the way you're designing these products nowadays, or the way we're designing nowadays, there's going to be a little bit of overleaf. But the primary function of any device is always going to be really what it does the best. I can take this switch, I can say, oh, this switch, it does layer 3 as well, right? But it's not going to do it at the depth that I can do with a router, right? That router will do layer 3, and it will do it all day long. And it can allow you some amazing controls, some amazing configuration options to really allow you to dig into it. So please don't ever think that just because my switch does layer 3, I don't need a router anymore. You could need connecting these interfaces. You could need any of the controls out there that a router provides. Every network's going to have its own different type of needs. But it's a great idea that If your switch does do it, if your router does do switching, well, then you get to decrease your equipment. You get to kind of play around with stuff. You get to kind of precondition that traffic a little bit before it needs to go upstream to more advanced and more costly product in your network. So routers and switches, real quickly, if you got to take an exam on it, a tip from your old Uncle Jimmy Ray is switches are layer 2. Routers are layer 3. And of course, like anything, we have hybrids, but for the most part, that's the difference.